Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jason. So I'm your guest host and director of fun and games from today for my Philly people. Might have heard that before. So I'm really excited to be joining two of my best friends. Yeah, you heard it. That we are really excited to talk about something that just irks everybody out there. It's what do you do? There's so much advice out there. There's so much going on in the world, and so much just these hardline rules that you have to follow to be good at prospecting that it's just so confusing. And so what we're going to do today is go over 5 myths that you've heard and you might believe in and you might follow. Then we're going to play our own version of Mythbusters here and basically say why it's not that you can't follow these rules, it's that you don't have to and still be good at prospecting. So you'll notice really quickly, if you don't know all 3 of us, you'll notice really quickly we align on one really key thing, is that it's all about testing. It's all about finding what works for you, finding your success formula, and doing the things consistently to put points on the board. So before we start, I'm just going to give you a quick intro to myself and then the crew. So I'm Jeff, CEO and founder of RevUp. We focus on getting people to 10% plus booked meetings on their outbound sales. And we do that through the help of these lovely people you see here. We sell the FIRE framework on our site. We sell a amazing new course that Jason and I put together called Outbound for Newbies on the site. And what we do is we apply those to your outbound. So that's who I am and how I joined the party here. So with that said, Jason, Christina, want to say hi to the group and introduce?
Go ahead, Christina.
Sure. Oh, ladies first. Cool. Yeah, I'm super excited. And again, Jason, I didn't miss the fact that Jeff referred to us as his best friends. It warms my heart every time. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Just to give a little intro about myself for those who might not know me, I'm always rocking avocados in the background. I saw a few people say they love my background. This is just part of my brand. So welcome to that. I currently lead sales development and marketing for an early stage startup called Interseller. And I get to be a player coach. So I'm very much on the front lines doing SDR work with everyone else in the world. So I found a lot of things that haven't worked. I found a lot of things that do work, found things that are repeatable. And I've had a lot of fun in the process. So I'm excited to share with you today. Jason.
Yeah. For those of you that came that didn't come from anything that I sent over to you, my name's Jason Bay. You guys, most people refer to me as J Bay. But I run a company called Blissful Prospecting, and I help reps and sales teams who love landing big meetings with prospects, but absolutely hate spending a ton of time on a cold email that a prospect never responds to. So if that's ever happened to you, you're definitely in the right place. And just to kind of echo what those two said, I've interviewed both of these guys on our podcast. Christina, she is actually a practitioner that has booked and continues to book 10% plus of like the emails she sends out into a meeting. Not a 10% reply rate, like 10% of the people she emails book a meeting. Jeff, same thing. Like we've talked and dug into sequences, and I'm starting to get fired up already. Like sequences and how to structure everything. And he's done a lot of really great work with his company at RevUp. So I'm super excited to collaborate with you too.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think you did my intro better than I did, Jason. So thank you. So with all that said, now that you know who the crew is here, just want to give a little kind of preview as to what's happening. So we're going to be sharing something at the end. So try and stay to the end. We're going to be sharing a link that you're going to want to see all the stuff that we're talking about here. But with that said, let's talk about first why we're doing this again. So it's basically how are people prospecting today and what's wrong with the mentality around prospecting. And as I said earlier, it's really about that, like you have to do this, you can't do that. We don't believe in always and never. That doesn't exist anymore. We believe in always be testing. That's where you use the always. So with that said, let's start with our very first myth of the 5 myths we're going to myth bust today. Salespeople need to think more like marketers.
So I'll start in this one.
Right.
So this is something I'm super fired up about right now because I see a lot of advice from actually people that do what I do. So trainers, consultants, coaches saying essentially, since the BDR role is starting to fall under marketing at a lot of companies, which I'm not opposed to. I think there's a lot of pros and cons to having it under marketing. But this concept of we need to think more like marketers, I think, and let me know in the chat, you guys, if any of you relate with this, but it's kind of like coming from this place of like, oh, every rep now needs to have a personal brand. Every rep needs to produce content on LinkedIn. Every rep needs to have a big following and fan base, essentially. Reps need to do whatever they can to create inbound, sort of interest. And all of those things are not necessarily bad, but I'm thinking, how do you have time to do all of these things? And I think the magic sort of recipe, if there is one, is not to be more like a marketer, but it's to repurpose what marketing is making in a way that fits into a one-to-one conversation. Because marketing, and I'm a marketer by trade also, so it's nothing against marketing. Marketing is typically a one-to-many kind of conversation. It's how do we create content, podcasts, webinars like this and do one-to-many? Well, when you're prospecting, it should feel one-to-one. So it's how do you provide that content, that messaging, those case studies, whatever it might be. How do I put this in front of someone so that it feels like it's for them, not for people like them, but so it feels like it's for them?
Oh boy, J-Bay, you're speaking my language. I think we talked about this too previously when we were kind of talking about doing this together. And, I come from marketing. I am a marketer. Sales development rolls up under my umbrella. And so what's really interesting is during my marketing career, I did make a hard switch into full cycle sales. And that's where my love for outbound kind of began. And so I spent a full year doing outbound sales. And I still do it now, but in a full cycle sales motion. And one hard thing I found was just because I could write really good marketing emails did not mean I could write really great sales emails. And so that's one hard lesson I learned, was going from that one-to-many feel and figuring out how to still keep the marketing elements that really mattered to me, right? Being able to come up with creative ways to start conversations, ending with different CTA, subject line creation, how to at least write like I speak, things like that. Those translate well. But like you said, repurposing and repackaging marketing materials, not feeling like you need to give a feature dump in an email. Those were hard switches for me personally, not going to lie.
Yeah. It's funny. All three of us actually come from a marketing background and are now really in sales. So it's kind of interesting to know. One thing you said, Jay, was about the personal brand. So I was talking to Morgan Ingram about this, and I said, you have a great personal brand. Everybody likes you. Why does every rep have to be like you? And he's like, no, if everyone was doing that, who would be selling?
Yeah.
Right? If everybody was out there doing content all day and evangelizing, who is actually sitting there and making those conversations, those one-to-one creatives conversations, right, Christina?
It's exhausting. I am strong on my personal brand. I think all three of us here do take time to build our personal brands. And I try to pass on some of those teachable elements to people on our team, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive in my opinion. Like, yes, you can have a strong brand and be really good at booking meetings and selling, right? Like, I think you can have both, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, you don't have to have both to be a strong seller. Right. So I think people get that twisted a little bit too much with the vocal voices that we have out there.
Right. Yeah. Good points, both of you. Jay, you have
I could add one thing, just because they're in response to what you said, Christina, around, because I'm curious how you approached this, because you've done it much more recently than I did. You said getting it more conversational. Talking or writing like you speak. This is something I still see issues with in the companies that I work with and the people that I help, is where I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm like this marketing, this message, this email, the subject line, everything has the feel of like a newsletter email versus a one-to-one, like, oh, Jason opened up his Gmail and fired off an email to me that looks like it was actually meant for me. Is there anything that you found that's helpful? Because I think this would be helpful for a lot of other folks too, to get like the language and the feel and the tone to feel like it's coming from an individual versus like a marketing team.
Yeah. I mean, practice makes perfect. I always say that to everyone when it comes to prospecting and outreach. Like, the more you do it, the more second nature things become. But what I'll say is, I think a big thing for me was pretending like I was messaging one of my kids, right? Like if I'm messaging my 12-year-old, how would she respond? Okay, I'm not going to use LOL and a whole bunch of like gifts necessarily, depending on who my audience is. But I'm going to not dumb it down, but keep it somewhat casual, but on point and brief, right? I know like brevity, that's something we've talked about too, Jeff. Keeping things brief, digestible. People only have so much attention they can give in a day. And that's the most important aspect. But I think it's really a mindset shift too. And I think one way that makes that repeatable, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a little bit too, is making sure you have your relevant audience, right? You know who you're really targeting, who your message is going to resonate with, but taking the time to, where am I going with this? Taking the time to personalize beyond those core marketing fields, like first name, industry, company name, things like that. You've got to show that it's got to feel like it's about them and that it's one-to-one, right? And you don't do that by personalizing what everyone else is personalizing, if that makes sense.
Right. No, and there's a good comment on the chat on this, is that I feel reps are challenged with the idea of writing professionally, but also make it sound like I would talk to you. So I've heard actually something very interesting from a customer of mine, and he referred to it as beer tone.
I love that. Yeah.
So you go out, let's imagine that we're all in the office together. We go out after work for drinks. And are we going to talk professionally? And are we going to be like, well, my company, we work with these companies and blah, 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 blah. Or are we going to say, hey, remember that account we worked with? It was pretty cool that we did whatever, right? It's very casual, that casual language. And so I really like that, because like a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people think of it as like right for a 7-year-old or something like that. But I mean, when you're thinking of beer tone, it kind of makes it so, no, you're talking to like an intelligent, like grown up person, but you're talking in a casual way.
I love that too. It's, I don't know. I think people worry too much about who they're reaching out to. At the end of the day, the people you're reaching out to are humans. And yes, CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, they laugh too sometimes. Like it's okay to try new things. Will it work on every single one? No, you can't blanket a persona or blanket an industry. You're still going to get people who don't resonate with your message or don't like the way you reached out. That's always going to happen, no matter how thoughtful you are. Trust me on that. But yeah, there are definitely ways to keep it a little more fun and conversational and approachable.
Right. Yeah. And so just in the interest of time, we're going to go through, we have 4 more myths to go through. But one question that's on the chat here is actually related to this next myth. So that myth is your emails should have relevance and personalization. So Jason, you want to take a crack at that one?
Yeah, this is I feel like relevance and personalization have become like really convoluted terms. I don't know if convoluted is the right word. I didn't finish college, you guys. So, and my wife constantly corrects me on my use of words, even though English is not our first language.
That's what Grammarly is for. Don't worry about it.
So it's like people talk about, oh, you need relevance, you need personalization. And it's like, what is personalization? What is relevance? I think there's a lot of confusion around like what part of the message actually needs to be customized for that person. And Christina, you actually kind of opened my eyes up to this a little bit in the way that you explain it, which is pretty interesting. So I won't steal your thunder there. But what I have found works way better to get a response is putting something in front of someone where the timing might be relevant based on like what they're going through. It's relevant for who they are in their position at their company. It might be relevant for like what that company is going through in their stage, and then relating it back to what someone in their position might care about. And I think there's this big sort of thinking that we need to spend 30 minutes on customizing an email. We need to spend an hour doing research before we reach out to people. And unless you're selling enterprise, really big 6 or potentially multi-year 7-figure deals, you probably don't need to spend an hour researching a company before you reach out to them. So I think it's really about like, how do we segment? How do we find out like the commonalities in the people that we're reaching out to so we can get like 95% of the way there and just add that little touch like, oh, by the way, and I saw you did this work at whatever other company. And it's almost like when you add that custom tidbit in, it's more to show that you didn't mass blast the email than it is to provide the context for the message.
Right. Good points. Good points, Jay. But then what do you think, Christina?
Oh man, I have so many very nuanced thoughts on this. There's three things at high level I'm just going to try to touch on real fast around this because I feel like I have a lot to say. A lot of people argue that relevance needs to be spelled out in their email copy when they're reaching out, or quite frankly, in any type of touch point. But I'm talking about email because that's my bread and butter here. And I actually have found quite the opposite. In fact, all of our email touch points don't actually mention anything about our company, what we do, a problem, a solution, nothing. And so I kind of argue and challenge people to think about the fact that this is dependent on a couple of things, right? Relevancy is built in at the prospecting level. And what I mean by that is if you are really buttoned up tight, that you are reaching out to the right people, that your message would be relevant to if it's in front of them, might not be the right timing, right? But they are the right target audience. Mm-hmm. And your website's very clear. If I was to go to Jeff's signature block, click on his webpage, where I land, I can clearly tell what you do and how maybe I can connect the dots. Very quickly, people will connect the dots themselves. We're in a consumer era. And so for me, there's a psychological component about doing my own research. So yes, I'm telling you to potentially have your prospects do their own research about who you are and what you do, connect the dots. And I will tell you that a lot of times they respond back with that context in mind. And it's kind of like turning an outbound lead into an inbound lead at that point. They're in control, right? So that's one piece I wanted to hit on. Mm-hmm. The other piece, which was a question that came up, was around research and kind of, not everyone's active on LinkedIn or on other social sites. And so I think avoiding that research rabbit hole, I think it's really important to have kind of a rule set. So to Jason's point, you don't need to spend an hour listening back to this webinar just to reach out to Jason, right? Right. Let's be smart about this. You could probably fast forward to halfway through, find something that Jason says, and use that as a quick quote. Hey, you said this on this webinar. Conceal the internal process. You didn't listen to the whole thing, but you pulled out a nugget that mattered. And so that's also, why I tell people if they're not active on LinkedIn, they don't have an active personal brand, then you go to the company page level. Then you go to the website, Google News alerts, things like that. And then I won't kind of get into this too much, but you can avoid personalizing too much by having a building block template, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have maybe 2 key phrases, quotes that change out each time. And the rest of your copy can stay relatively the same, but you're keeping it fresh and personalized to that person by changing out those kind of 2 key phrases versus personalization tokens like first name.
That's a really good point, Christina, is the building block template. And it kind of combines with what Jason was saying. Like, how would you go about deciding which customer goes where, or which prospect goes with which messaging? So, because you have building block templates that might have, different relevancy depending on who you're prospecting to. So how do you make that decision?
Yeah. So the building block template that we tend to rely on can pretty much apply to anyone. I could share it with everyone here, and I will, by the way, just hit me up, or I'll do it in follow-up. I could share that building block template with everyone, and we wouldn't have to worry about the fact that we're pulling a template off of, Google, that 20 million other salespeople have overused, and deliverability is an issue because it's really just 2 key pieces that change out. And so like for someone asked for an example, I'll just like kind of riff an example here. Jason, about that webinar, that's my subject line. And I'm going to say something like, hey, Jason, I listened to the webinar that you did with Jeff and Christina the other day on outbound sales. You said something about prospecting that really resonated with me. Insert quote. Would love to take some time and chat with you if you have some time this Thursday at 1. Yes, I prompt for a call. We can talk about that another time. But basically, I would love to earn the right to talk through how Interseller might fit in. That's it. Cheers, Christina. That's all. He's then going to probably say, oh, she liked my webinar. It was about me. And he's going to go and probably check out what I do or what Interseller is, right? And decide, like, is this relevant to me? Yeah, maybe I will give her some time. I mean, it just really depends.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned something I think that's so powerful. And I'm going to drop an email example in here too.
Yes.
Into the chat. This is an email I used to land a meeting with a decent sized company a couple weeks ago. I put the personalization in the PS, and I think I could have got the meeting without it actually. But like the thing that you're talking about, Christina, that we're seeing a lot of success with too, is don't give away everything in that first email.
Yeah.
Like one thing that I remember you sharing, Christina, in our podcast we did together is that you noticed a huge correlation with meetings booked and people that clicked on the website in your signature. So that's like something tactical everyone can do is if you're going to use click tracking, which we can debate back and forth whether or not that's a smart idea to use. I think it's really good to start out a sequence with and to test it. But either link to a website or your LinkedIn profile if it's really good. And now, like you're saying, the person can put 2 and 2 together. So like when you look at that template that I threw into the chat, notice like the first paragraph is, so this was directed at an enablement director, which is one of my personas. One thing I'm hearing from enablement teams is that they're looking to do this. It doesn't talk, to your point, Christina, it doesn't say one thing I'm hearing from enablement teams is how much of a pain in the butt it is to do X, Y, Z. You know, so we can be too focused on pain too. It's like, hey, is this something that would be relevant? Those first 2 paragraphs, this entire email besides the PS, I could send to anyone in enablement and it would be pretty relevant to what they're working on. And I just throw that PS in. That took me 2 minutes to find. If she didn't live in Cedar Park, I just would put something around, oh, I thought this was relevant because I talked to a lot of enablement people and they say this, you know? So it doesn't need to be this like hyper personalized, like all of this other stuff. The repeatable elements and like putting something that is important to that person in there, like it's not as hard as you would think if you're talking about the right thing. And that might be something we talk about too. I don't know what finding that right thing to do, but Christina, what's cool about your message is it's like, it doesn't say anything about like problems, challenges, so my solution, like nothing like that.
Yep. No. Yeah. I mean, I'm banking on the fact that I've got my prospect right. And I've got a good website that's very clear as to what we do. So yeah, I think people do feel like they need to dump everything. I just got an email before this where they attached a 1-pager and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You just emailed me for the first time and told me everything about your company and attached a 1-pager. Like, we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
Drum up some curiosity is all I'm saying.
You know what that made me think of? That'd be like, hey, if we were all going to hang out as friends and go watch a movie together and I send a group text to all of us and I say, hey, you guys want to go watch a movie together? And then I send this huge long attachment in there with like every single movie listed, every single time, 3 different movie theaters that we could go to. And it's like, dude, it's just too much. Yeah. Like you're overloading people with all of this information. And one last thing I would say is around, and this is something I've learned from my business coaches for marketing, but it applies to prospecting, is don't engineer the prospecting process around like conversions as much as conversations. Like make your stuff easy to respond to. Yeah. Like Christina, your call to action is, do you have time for a quick call this week? Yeah. I'm assuming it's not you dropping in a calendar link into there, right? And you may do that later on in the sequence, but it's engineered to get a response from the person. It's extremely easy to respond to and digest the information. That's so important.
Yeah. These are great tips, folks. And both of you, thank you very much, addressed how to scale personalization, right? Which is really important because that was the question that was asked before. And thank you for the examples. So we could probably riff on personalization for pretty much the rest of the show. But we do have 3 more myths. So with that said, let's go into myth number 3. So this is one of my favorite ones. If you can automate it, you should. So Christina, do you want to take that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I work for an email automation platform. I'm a really big fan. Anytime I'm talking about optimizing tech stack, whether that's for sales folks, marketers, recruiters, which is my target audience, I'm a big fan of thinking forward, not too forward, but do my systems talk, right? Will they play nice together? Because I think too often what happens is people kind of think about solutions in a couple of different ways. One is they think about using automation or using, tech as like band-aids for very specific problems, which isn't a bad thing, right? You should be evaluating your process, understanding where your reps are spending most of their time or where the bottlenecks are, where you could create those efficiencies. But oftentimes what ends up happening is now they've got this great solution for one part of the pie. And as they scale, they realize, well, crap, I've got this other problem and nothing talks to this piece of technology. So we're going to create multiple steps, right? So I think that's one point. The other point is automate the mundane and keep the human. I mean, it's as simple as that. You can automate things like updating your CRM, sending follow-up emails that are a little bit more of like one-to-one, but non-highly personalized copy, right? Things like that kind of keep you on track in a process, make it fit your process, but don't take the human elements out. That's where things get real tricky. That's all I have to say for now.
Before moving on to Jason, thank you for that, Christina. So what are some of the ways that people have kind of scaled the wrong processes that you've seen?
Oh, on the recruiting side, it's a hot mess. I mean, I hate to say that if there are any recruiters listening in. I mean, I think most of them will understand this. I mean, recruiters are leaps and bounds behind the tech adoption of us marketers and sales folks. So it's just a little bit of a different challenge. But yeah, I mean, listen, I've seen people bolt on solutions and they're literally creating more hoop jumping to get from system to system or get through the process than the bottlenecks they originally solved, So like having to download a CSV file and then having to import it somewhere else or things like that. It's like, is that really creating efficiencies for you? It may. For some people, having to download a CSV and import it is actually a step in the right direction for process improvement. But again, I just urge people to look at their process and make tech fit your process. Is
not
really
make your
what it's
process
about.
fit your tech. Yeah, I like
empowering
that.
and enabling your folks. Yeah.
So. It's a very important distinction, right? Make tech fit your process, not the other way around, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very important.
But
so I great quotes from Christina Finseth on this one, right? Automate the mundane and keep the human.
Yeah. No, I'm sure Jason's going to have things to say about this too. But
no, Jason's next. Let's do this, bud. Let's do
it. Yeah. So automate the mundane. Joe commented, by the way, future T-shirt. That's definitely a sweet T-shirt, right? Automate the mundane. That would be a good inner seller T-shirt. So the way I think about this is like with automation, I think people have you're susceptible to a set it and forget it type of thing. So the way I would equate this is for those of you that might use a personal finance app, which we use, it creates accountability with every single purchase because it pops up, right? It's always top of mind. Whereas if you don't use a personal finance tracking app, you might look at the end of the month and just look at the total amount that's in your bank account and be like, hey, that's a little lower than I thought it would be. There's no accountability at each purchase. So what you need when you're sending sequences is accountability at each stage of the sequence. Right. A really simple hack that you can do is don't automate anything the first time you send a sequence. Make all of it manual tasks and create this accountability where you have to click send. Because you know what starts happening is when you have to click send, you're going to be like, oh man, I wouldn't send this email. And that's normally something that would just go out without you even thinking about it. So before you are quick to automate everything, make sure that you have accountability around sending it, scheduling a task, sending the LinkedIn invite, whatever it is. Create accountability around you having to send it out. Do that for a week or two. Your volume's going to be lower doing that, but then now you can get a sequence where you're automating some of the follow-ups that are not as personalized, but they don't sound like an email that's not personalized. So do it manually the first time.
That's really good advice, Jason. Thank you. Because so you're figuring maybe 2 weeks people should do that for?
At least a week to 2 weeks. And it really depends on volume. Mm-hmm. I want to send this sequence out manually to 50 to 100 people. So however long it takes for you to do that, you're going to be surprised. The response rate's probably going to be way higher doing it that way for you. Because again, like you're just going to be like, oh God, I can't send this. This is awful. You know, my name's on this email. Like I can't send this. Right. So your first 50 to 100, I would do it manually if you're creating something new. And it requires you, again, to have that accountability. Even open up the person's LinkedIn profile and be like, okay, like I'm looking at Christina's face. She looks like she might get a little angry if I sent this to her because it has no context in it. Or she might be a little weirded out by this because this is not even relevant to someone that's in her position at all. I need to go back to the drawing board. Like you need to go through those pieces first before you go out and create a whole sequence.
No, I really like that. And we had to talk about that last month about sending it to at least like 25 or so people and really looking at those at the people while we're doing it. So just for reference, everybody here, I actually took Jason's advice on this for that. Send it out to people I know. I sent it to him. One of my emails and got an unsubscribe. No, we were just joking back and forth, but like
with you.
I
actually sent me a cold email and I responded back unsubscribed.
So that was pretty fun. That was pretty fun to get. And then at first I just saw the unsubscribe and I went, he's messing with me. Okay. But it's a fantastic process. And I really like that the whole concept of, looking at the LinkedIn profile while you're doing it. And it makes for really good, solid emails. And it really makes I can tell you my email template looked like one thing at the beginning and looked way different at the end because of that. So it's truly great advice. Thank you. Now we had an interesting little side chat going on where it was about Christina, not this Christina, a different one, mentioned that her CEO loves email automated sequences. And so they want to blast 500 contacts a week. And then with nothing personal, it's all about building awareness is what she says. So I would love your hot takes on that, Christina.
Oh, Jason, I'm going to go first on this one. I talk to people every day about behavior shift and getting buy-in for personalization from their leadership team, because there's definitely some harsh opinions there. The worst thing though, and this is the way I kind of think about it when I explain to people, when you take kind of that mass blast kind of feel, think about it in this way. Let's say I mass blast 500 people today, right? Because I can, quite frankly, all of us can if we want to. And let's just say 300 of those people end up unsubscribing, or they end up, writing me back like, don't reach out to me again, because it was super non-personal. It felt pretty, salesy, hefty, whatever. Here's the problem there. You now have a barrier to entry that didn't exist before. And what I mean by that is now you have to get beyond that bad first impression to then gain respect and interest in potentially moving forward with a conversation. The reason why I like more of the quality, thoughtful, quite frankly, maybe slower approach and more methodical approach to outbound is that you aren't shutting doors at that level. So, I mean, just to be very frank, in Q1, we maybe had a handful of unsubscribes. Did we get a whole lot of crickets on some of those? Yes. But did they say no? No. Did they say, don't reach out to me again? No, we've got opportunity to re-engage and continue to build that relationship and trust, right? So I think of it in that way. And you'll also find when you take more of a personalized and thoughtful approach, and this is something I'm happy to work on a business case with you for your CEO and how to word this, is you're going to get more insightful no's. And there is nothing wrong with an insightful no, people. Like if someone comes back and says, hey, Christina, really love this message. I can tell you took the time. We're just not in the market right now, but we will be evaluating new tech solutions in Q4. Can you reach back out then? That is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You may have objections you can counter, right? That you can maybe get through. But in that case, I'm taking that as a win. I now know when it's going to be relevant timing for me to potentially reach out. Could they be pushing me off? Yes. But again, that's the way I think about it in terms of quality and quantity and using automation in the wrong way.
Very great points. Jason, do you have something to add?
Dude, so much gold there, Christina.
Yeah, that was great.
Tried to
Two things. I don't think people realize when someone unsubscribes from an email, you cannot ever email them again. Like that's how CAN-SPAM works. So if you send a list of 500 CEOs and half of them unsubscribe, you literally lost your connection through email to any of those CEOs. That's permanent. Like you can never get that back. The other thing is sort of alluding to what you said, Christina, is create your own case study. So you know what, on your own time, an hour a day, maybe during your lunch break or early in the morning or at the end of the day, send out 10 or 15 personalized emails doing it the way that you think will work. And then come back to your boss and be like, hey, when I sent out these 15 emails, I actually got like 2 meetings from it. It took me an hour to do, but I got 2 meetings from it. I think they're pretty good versus I sent out 500, half of them unsubscribed, and I got 1 meeting, from that. So create your own case study. Do something yourself on your own time. It'll be a little bit more work, but just show your boss, because you know what your boss wants? They want meetings and they want revenue. So if you can show them a path to that and document it yourself, that's the way to go. So treat your boss like a prospect you're building a business case for and trying to sell. And I'm not an expert on business cases, so talk to Christina about that.
Data doesn't lie. I like that, Jason. Data doesn't lie. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Oh, and another excellent quote from Jason. What they want is meetings and revenue. They don't want awareness and unsubscribes. They want meetings and revenue. So if you can make the business case, then it's fantastic. So what's interesting, I'm going to shed a little bit more light on this. And I wanted to bring this up just because it comes up a lot in my world. But Christina said that the big thing is that her boss invested in Zoom Info, so bought a lot of credits, so really wants to use them up. Have you, Jason, have you heard this from clients before? Want to use up the credits?
Oh yeah, they're like, we have to, there's a sunk cost fallacy kind of thing. We already invested because Zoom Info is very expensive. We've already invested this. We have to get as much as we can out of this. So we need to email everyone before we lose access to it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And Christina, did the look on your face right now?
What about pulling and saving them? Anyway, go ahead.
Right on. Okay. So let's take a little bit of a detour here. Let's talk about phones. So what's a huge myth you hear all over the place? Well, cold calling is dead. People don't pick up the phone anymore. Like we shouldn't even use the phone at all. What do you think?
I'm passing that to Jason because I'm not gonna lie, I don't cold call. My team does, so I can speak to that, but I don't cold call and I won't pretend like I do. So
if you don't need to, I'm totally okay with that. Yeah. If you could get 10% of the people you reach out to plus to book a meeting, don't pick up the phone, unless you have time for it, because you might be able to double it, with the phone. But things are obviously contextual, right? But if you're going in thinking that because people don't pick up, the phone is not a good tool to use, there's so many examples I can show you of people responding back to one of our clients' emails saying, oh, I got your voicemail. Yeah, let's chat. Or, hey, got your voicemail. People listen to it. And the thing that you want to think about is what is the user experience of someone that carries around one of these things? I'm holding a smartphone. For those of you guys that don't know what this is, something that just about everyone you're reaching out to has. And guess what? When they get an email, that thing dings. When they get a voicemail, that thing dings. When they get a missed call, it dings. Right? When they get a LinkedIn connection request, it dings. So think about the user experience that you're creating for the prospect, and it's really about connecting those things together. So if all you did was leave 30 voicemails a week that at the end just say, Christina, I'm about to send you an email with blank as the subject line, and it's got something in there I think that's really important that's going to catch your attention because what you said in that webinar really stuck out to me. Bam, leave it. A lot of people get their voicemails transcribed and emailed to them through Google Voice. Especially anyone technical, by the way. I've never met an IT person that did not get their voicemails transcribed and emailed to them because they're a little more techie, with that kind of stuff. Yeah. So make sure to point people to other mediums that you're using. So just because it's not working for you and people aren't picking up, and I have a whole host of strategies around how to increase pickup rates, but it is absolutely worth your time to leave voicemails.
Awesome.
Yes, and I agree with you. I kind of lied a little bit. I don't cold call in the traditional sense. But one very key step of our framework here is LinkedIn voice messages. And I will tell you, so it's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like leaving a voice message, right? Yeah. And I will tell you, those work really well too, depending on where your audience is and, obviously prospect to prospect. But I like what you said, Jason, about getting them to different mediums. And so what I usually say, I have a little bit of a script, but I've memorized it, so I'm pretty used to it. But I'll say, hey, Jason, happy Tuesday. Just wanted to reach out and leave you a note and say thanks so much for accepting my connection request. Definitely excited to have you in my network. In case you didn't connect the dots, I've also sent a couple of emails your way, and I'm really curious too, and then go in. I like using that language because then what usually ends up happening is either maybe they didn't get my emails or they looked them over. Now their brain's going, they're like, wait, I got an email, and then they go back and they refer back to it. You could do the same with video message too, but that's the language I use in the beginning. And then I have kind of my value prop spiel that I run into, but that works.
I love in case you didn't connect the dots, that is like, that language is very, very good. I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And by that time I've sent 2 emails already. So I know that that's just where it falls in my process. But yeah, that tends to work pretty well too. So I think it's the same process as like a cold call in the traditional sense and leaving a voice message. But yeah.
You could totally do that in a voicemail too, you guys. Hey, in case you didn't connect the dots, I sent an email to you about this and you accepted my connection request. So it's like you make it feel multi-channel to the prospect. Like you have to point out to them that you're the person that sent that email and did that thing on LinkedIn, because most people we're reaching out to are getting dozens of cold outreaches every week. So they don't see that the email they got from you yesterday is from the same person that left them a voicemail last week. They don't see that connection.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And I mean, Jay, we talked about that as well, like a month ago. About how you really use that as this continuous cycle, get people back to your core message, whatever your core strategy is, whether it's the phone or the email or LinkedIn, it's get people back into that core messaging strategy so that you're telling them the whole story and they're getting the whole picture.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I just looked at my attribution here on where things converted for me in Q1. Noted I'm doing kind of split focus. So I'm not full-time doing heads down SDR work, but out of 35 meetings in Q1, 5 of those came from LinkedIn voice message or a LinkedIn voice message follow-up bump. If anything, it gets people to at least, push to other channels. It's another medium, right? Omni-channel is the way to go. So
yeah. Yep. No, 100%. So there's one thing that a lot of times gets people to think that, cold calling is dead or whatever. And it's a boss or a well-respected colleague at your company that says, for our audience, phone doesn't work. Or for our audience, insert channel here doesn't work. So how do you, as a rep, get around that in your company?
Dude, one thing I just could not stand is like one of the people that was participating in our boot camp, like they crush it on LinkedIn and get a lot of meetings. And she's trying to get her team bond, and she's a sales manager, into calling. And then her boss in their sales meeting earlier that week is like talking shit basically about someone that cold called him and how it was so like old school and like all this other stuff. So I think it starts at the top with like, if you're a rep, get someone. It could be your manager, whoever it is, like find someone on the leadership team that is like open to like really testing this and like helping you champion it. I don't know what else you would do as a rep when your leadership is not bought into that. You have to find some sort of way to get them bought in, even if it's you just saying, hey, can I make 100 of these calls this week and test some stuff? And I need your help with some of that messaging. Like, can we work together on it so that we can really see if this works or not? Like, because I want to see the data. How many calls did you make? How many people picked up? What were the outcomes of those calls? There's so much to do there. And the other thing too, I find with those companies is that they don't have very good data. So they don't have mobile phones, direct lines. I mean, there's companies that you can pay to help you get really good data too. Like they'll actually call through the stuff and see like which ones of these people, open up or pick up calls more than others. So there's a lot of different. I mean, Connect and Sell is another one. Connect Leader is a company I partner with. Like there's solutions out there to get the volume, picked up on the phone, but you got to find someone internally to let you test it and be on board with that, and then to champion it with you if it works.
I think that's important distinction there is that you need to get people to let you test it, because there are times when you're a rep and you're beholden to the idea that your boss just says no, you cannot do it. But I think I really like your concept earlier, Jay, is about testing it on your lunch break if you have to. If you have to go off book, do it outside of the office. Make your calls from the phone in the parking lot across the street. Like whatever you have to do, just prove that and make the business case, to your point, Christina, to really make it. Right.
Yeah. And a lot of times it does take you just finding a way to do it and incorporate it into your day, even if that means, you can't sacrifice what your KPIs are and what you're kind of, weighted on in your role. But I've always found a way to figure out how to disrupt things by testing them, and then secretly gathering the data, building a process around it, and then presenting the entire business case. Oftentimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to, not try something. So I like what Jay added there for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have several questions here. I'm going to start with one is, what do you recommend if the persona you're wanting to contact with has their emails and voicemails all read by their assistant?
Yeah, I was just typing out an answer to that. The Art Sobchak wrote a book called Smart Calling, and the whole thesis of that book is essentially they're not gatekeepers, they're assistants. This person's job is to assist people. So you need to be assistable. So what I like to do, there's a couple different techniques you can use. One of them is called a courtesy call technique. I shared this on LinkedIn today. A guy, Jordan Greek, came up with it in our boot camps, and that sounds something like this. Hey, Jeff, my name is Jason. I'm with Blissful Prospecting. This might sound like a totally odd request, but I'm trying to get a hold of Christina Finseth, and I've actually sent her a bunch of emails. She's been opening them and all that stuff. And I was putting it in courtesy call because she might have some questions, and you would probably know better than I. Is there a good way to get a hold of her?
Right.
Ask the person for help. You don't need to say exactly what I said there, but you need to acknowledge that what you're about to ask for is like a pretty big ask, and then make a clear ask of help from the person. So look at like how you can befriend this person and make a clear ask for help.
Good points. Good points. Thank you. Christina, anything to add on there?
Nothing to add except send them some banana nut bread. I don't know. Yeah. Jay's got that one covered.
Awesome. Well said. Well said. So we're going to go into the final myth of our session today. Open rates and reply rates are vanity metrics you shouldn't worry about.
Go ahead, Christina.
I'm feeling like Christina's got it.
At the minute.
Let me at it.
If I wasn't standing, I would be going to standing right now. Yeah. Listen. Okay. I'm going to give my high level quick 2 cents on this. I don't care about open rates or reply rates or click rates until desired outcomes aren't there. And so what I mean by that is I look at the bottom of kind of the funnel of the top of funnel process. I know that's a mouthful, but you know what I'm saying. I look at the end all be all. What's the end all be all? Booked conversations. Yeah. That's the end all be all. If those are happening, let's just say you're getting 5% plus booked meetings and you only have 40% opens. Who gives a crap that you only have 40% opens if they are converting, right? So I kind of think of it in terms like that. If they're not booking, and then I'm looking at replies. And so if your replies are 1%, then we're going to get into opens and like what your content is, that kind of stuff. But if you've got 30% replies and they're not converting to booked conversations, I also want to dig into the content. Do we have the right CTA? Do we have the right content? Do we have the right people to be reaching out to? Opens, I don't care if you have an 80% open rate if nothing else is happening in the funnel. I mean, that's just real clear. So I wouldn't say that they're vanity metrics. I think they are indicators. Mm-hmm. But what people sometimes weigh on is like, Jay, I'm running this email campaign, man. I've got 90% opens. That's great, Christina. I'm sure Jay's going to follow up and say, all right, cool. But what's happening once they open? Are they clicking? Okay, then why aren't they converting? Are they replying? Are they booking? So that's high level, but that's how I would that's how I think about it. I'm working backwards instead of from opens to booked meetings is kind of the way I look at it.
So it's really, it's if I'm understanding you correctly, Christina, it's not about these being vanity metrics in their own. They're indicators of some type of down funnel success. But if you're optimizing for these types of metrics, then it's the wrong metrics to optimize for.
Yeah, you should not be like, if reps are being weighted on those metrics, I don't think that they're really good indicators of success in the role. Like I would be looking from booked conversations down, and you should be using those metrics like opens and clicks and replies, things like that, as coachable moments, right? Whether it's, hey, Jason's been running this sequence and holy crap, he is getting so many booked meetings. Let's replicate this crap, right? Or if it's, okay, this message is not working. We need to abort this and either tweak it. So use it to figure out what you need to be tweaking and testing and iterating on. Or, hey, we tried this. We've sent it about 200 people. I don't think that it's going to produce the right results. Let's go ahead and pause this. Let's start over. Let's do something different. So I think it's just they're good indicators, in my opinion, of what could be going right, what could be going wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like, based on what you're saying, is that it's really about how you use the data rather than what the data is.
Yep. Absolutely. Synthesize that data and figure out what it's telling you.
Yeah.
And what you need to do from there. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right. So Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll make this one quick because we're about out of time. I definitely love everything that you guys have shared there. The way I would look at it is like, if you don't have an open rate of 50+%, there's room for improvement. So if you're booking 10% of the people into meetings and you have 50% open rate, what I would be thinking about is like, is there tweaks that I could make to the subject line? Am I having deliverability issues maybe? There's another tool that I would test. I'll throw it in the chat. It's called mail-tester.com. We had a client in one of our boot camps. He had like an 8% open rate. And I'm like, dude, like a freaking monkey could write an email and get a higher open rate than that. What's going on? And they were having all kinds of deliverability issues. So it's just at bats. The more people that open up your email, the more at bats you're going to get. So I would try to optimize that as much as possible, but it all comes down to what you said, Christine, around meetings booked. If like that should be the number one thing you're looking at, and everything else is a leading indicator up to it. And then reply rates as well. Like you really want double-digit reply rates. And if you're not getting into that, it's like more, what should I be working on? So I don't want to beat a dead horse. You said basically everything that I would have said.
I'm sorry. I feel like I just go on a tangent sometimes, especially when it comes to those kinds of things, because people put the weight on the wrong thing, or the emphasis, the word I was looking for earlier, on the wrong thing sometimes. And let's just keep that in check. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for this amazing short, it seemed like it was short, but it was actually an hour-long chat about the 5 myths. And did we sufficiently myth bust these 5 myths? Would you say, tell us in the chat?
Yeah, let us know, you guys.
Did you learn at least one thing?
All right. Woo-hoo! We did well. Woo! Okay, awesome. So while you're all saying yes, we busted those myths, we said that we were going to give you a special link at the end of this. So I'm going to give you or Jason, if you could share a link to the website. So this website right here, you'll be able to find both Christina and Jason's course. So we officially launched today, as of this moment right now, we are officially launching the Outbound for Newbies course. From myself and Jason Bay, and also selling the Outbound Fire Framework from Christina directly on revup90.com. So take a click on the link in the comments there. We'll be sending this out after the email as well, but you can go ahead and buy these wonderful people's intellectual property right now. tips, tricks, everything that you need. Just get inside their heads and get all of these great tips in person. You can take a look online and learn all about it. And anything you buy on here, you're going to be able to message any of us to learn about it and just, ask your questions. Oh no, website not loading. Are you serious?
Gotta love tech.
Love tech, folks.
Go enjoy some guacamole. I want some too, Jeremy.
Yeah. I think it's being overloaded with traffic right now, man.
Uh-oh. Okay. Send that, send the other links, Jay. It's loading for Christina.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, folks, give it a minute. There's a lot going on at once.
We'll send this out to you guys via email afterwards too. Yeah, dude, you're getting bombarded with traffic, man.
Yeah, it's a DDoS attack, but a good one. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. Hope you learned something and hope you're able to learn even more with these wonderful courses. Jay, I'll toss it to you for the bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys, for participating, and Jeff, thank you for hosting, man. We'll get an email out to you afterwards with like the links. There'll be a recording and stuff that goes up later today too. But yeah, thank you so much, you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Hanging with my besties. That was so easy. I need time to hang out with you.
See ya. Have a good one.
Bye.